Hello, friends. Hello out there. This is Gabriel Fancher. I'm the host of the Middle Ground podcast, and I've been having technical difficulties today, but hey, that's why we keep trying. I think I figured it out though. And so I'm glad that you have joined me. Earlier today, I had the chance to sit down with Kurt Potter of KP Politics. He also has another business that he's starting up, Round Politics, that he was able to sit down with me via Zoom and talk with me about stealing elections, which is in the news. A lot of people talking about it. And I think it's an interesting topic. So, on this podcast, normally I talk about local issues like Murfreesboro, Rutherford, Middle Tennessee. But in this case, we're going to talk about some federal issues, which I think the interesting issue about this, that it really boils down to some constitutional issues. And therefore, that means that it's sort of, that means a constitutional issue could affect Middle Tennessee, right? And so it's important. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to run this interview that I had with Kurt so you guys can hear from him and myself. And then we'll come back and we'll wrap up the show. So stay tuned. Let me run that now. Okay. Hey, guys. This is Gabriel Fancher, and I'm here on the Middle Ground podcast. I've got my friend Kurt Potter, who runs KP Politics. He is a political consultant. And so, in the news right now, we hear a lot that's being litigated about whether or not an election can be stolen. So I thought I would invite Kurt on here to see if I could hire his. But I really do want to know is it, are there some things that we need to be concerned about? And so, Kurt, can you just tell me a little bit about what your business does? We'll start there, and then we'll jump back into the craziness that I want.
Sure, not a problem. All right, so just to give a plug, the website's civicauthority.com. And what I'm in the process of doing, I've got two companies. One is called RKS Strategies, and we run campaigns and help people with legislation. The second one is KP Politics, and what KP Politics is kind of an effort to build sort of a Dave Ramsey sort of organization to teach average, everyday, ordinary people how to effectively engage this political process. And so that's what I do in the background.
Nice, that's cool. And so, but you have run some campaigns before.
Oh, several. I've run 15 campaigns. So far, I'm 13-2.
13-2. And have you ever had to cheat to win?
Nope, I don't play that game that way. But I've had to deal with people who to win or try to cheat. That's part of the game too.
So knowing how someone cheats is important, right?
Sure.
Right. So
Yeah,
it's part of it. Okay. So standing right now, it's hard right now to get the news to tell you what's going on from what I tell. I'm trying to stay as middle of the road as possible on this issue, right? As a libertarian, I'm I like divided government more so than when they're getting along, it seems, because I feel like when they're getting along, it's time to put your hand on your wallet, So, so right now you've got Trump and his legal team who are trying to overturn or get some ballots cast out or recounted. There's different things going on in different places. My understanding is basically we've got some constitutional laws that are being wrangled with right now with the 14th Amendment and protecting people's voting rights. And then Article 2 is up in a couple Pennsylvania places where they're discussing who should be writing voter law. And then, so when you turn on CNN or, one of the other cable news, they're saying that, they were first saying that no fraud at all. Then they were saying there was no, can't remember the exact words they're using, but there's no systematic fraud, right? Where there's widespread, one evil person, cheating. But from what I'm hearing from the, my Trump fans and where I can get it on the internet is that there are tons of people who have signed affidavits, which for those of you that haven't been involved in a legal situation, an affidavit is where you swear that you're telling the truth under perjury of law. And so they've got tons and tons of these people, even election officials, who have come forward and said that they know of these instances of cheating that has taken place. Is that what you're hearing, Kurt, or am I on point here?
Yeah, it's very similar to what I'm hearing. Yeah, and it's from what they're saying, I think a little background is good here, because what most people think is that the people elect the president. It's the states that, and so each state can do it differently, however they want to do it. Each state has its slate of electors, and they can be allocated by the state. For example, the state legislature can go ahead and do that. It's been done like that in the past. The fact that they allow us to vote for the president is a state's decision, and so we don't necessarily have to be a part of that process. But luckily we are.
Wow.
And so when people think about it, they think, well, we won this election, or I voted, right? Yeah, you did, but it's really your state that elects the president.
I see. So the actual election hasn't taken place, is what you're saying.
Right. That'll happen when they get together for the electoral college.
Okay. All right. So that being said, there's from what I can gather is there's voting machines that are those Dominion voting machines, and then of course we had record number mail-in ballots now, right? And so that's two different ways that I've heard that there's possible fraud that has taken place. Are there any other ways that you know of that?
It depends. It depends on the state. Every state's election is different. Like in Tennessee, for example, we have the voting machines, right?
Right.
But we don't have a paper ballot that comes out of that we can check ourselves and go stuff into a ballot box.
True.
So how do you know that your ballot is being properly recorded, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so we really live in a system that's based on faith. We believe that our votes count, and so with that, if it becomes dangerous, because when you do get ballot harvesting, ballot stuffing, destruction of ballots, and all of that other sort of stuff that goes on, it really kind of erodes core in our faith. And so it's interesting because voting machines, and I think that this is becoming the center of this whole thing. They're really I don't know what's the word, subject to whoever codes them, and they get coded just before every election. And so I'm trying to think. There was 2018. It was South Carolina. They had one district that had over 400 votes that were changed by the machine.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's a local election, and 400 votes can be pretty significant in a local election. Now, go ahead.
Well, so they changed people's votes. How did they find out that the votes were changed?
I guess they had to audit the machines.
Okay.
But that becomes part of the problem with voter fraud. When you start to take a look at recounts and all that other sort of stuff, enough people handle millions and millions of votes, and to do it properly, to audit and make sure that everything's absolutely correct.
Sure. I mean, if you were auditing Rutherford County's elections, you're just looking through receipts of what these machines have spit out. And so if you were able to program the machines to vote however you wanted them to vote, right, and spit out a certain number, then you could, I can imagine that you'd be able to do that, right? Like that is possible. I've talked with Alan Farley about this, and he says that the machines are locked down, that they don't plug them into anything, so there's no internet running into them, so they can't be hacked from afar or anything like that. But you do wonder if people could get a hold of them beforehand and and make them do what they want them to do.
That's exactly right. And typically what is a machine that somebody turns, and your polling place, and there'll be one out of the four is changing every third vote for A to candidate B.
Wow.
Something along those lines.
Wow. And
so it becomes very under the radar, and it's to detect.
Very difficult to detect because no one shares how they vote, right? And so the polls, that's the thing that gets me about this election, is that the polls were so far off, right? And so then you have what happens in the election, and so you don't really know what to believe. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, is that people in general don't know what to believe. They feel like I think that a lot of people feel like they can't trust the news any longer unless the news is saying something that they agree with. And then they, for some reason, trust it. But I don't know. I constantly, when I'm listening, even to NPR, I say, I'll say to myself, it was just an opinion that the news person gave, right? Like that's an opinion. And because they give opinions on the news, you have to weigh it out far more. You have to really listen, and then their thumb is on the scale, and so is your own, and so it's very difficult.
And political messaging becomes part of what we do as well. So like when you go into a campaign, the messaging that you put out and the way you put it out becomes critical in terms of influencing the way people think about a candidate. And so from that standpoint, the media is no different. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing.
Wow. So, so if you were going to steal a race, how would you do it?
If I were to try to steal a race,
yep,
I would start with micro targeting.
Okay. What's that mean? What's that term mean?
So when I take a look at an election, what I do is I will actually go and look at, and as a matter of fact, Rutherford County, if you go down to the square there to the voter registration place, the election commission, you can buy voter data. And so I think the last one I bought was like $35, and I had several campaigns that were that were going in like 10 years past history. Mm-hmm. And so what I'll do is I will take a look at the conditions surrounding those campaigns, and I will look for similar conditions. Like, is there a presidential race going on this year? Or is there some kind of special measure on the ballot? Those sorts of things I'll take a look at. And what I will do is I will find several several years where they were similar to this one that I'm about to take on. Mm-hmm. And then what I'll do is adjust for population and figure out a percentage of turnout that typically turns out for those races. Then what I will do is I will use that data to really figure out, as far as the voter turnout is going to be, now who is it that's going to turn out? So then what I'll do is I'll go and actually take a look at who's voted in the last 4, 5, 6 elections. And I will tier those people. So out of the last 4, I want to know who the people are who voted 4 out of the last 4 elections.
Sure.
I want to know who voted 3 out of the last 4, 2 out of the last 4, 1 out of the last 4. And so now what happens is you can start making assumptions on those people. Like the 4 out of 4s, they're always going to turn out. So those are the people we're going to hit, right? We're going to knock on their doors and talk to them. But you get those 1 out of 4s. Those are the people who don't typically show up. Mm-hmm. And the question is, can I in some way get control of their ballot?
Okay.
And so,
oh wow.
So now you get them to turn out in my way.
Sure. Wow. And so if you were in a state where you people's ballots, so to speak, you might bring those ballots to their house.
Yeah,
and help them fill it out, right?
Exactly right. Or and maybe I don't even take it to their house. Maybe I just go take it to some central place, and we just sit there and fill out ballots. Go turn them in, and then the next thing you know, there are these people. Every now and then, they're going to have somebody show up. Well, you've already voted. No, I didn't. But they're an anomaly. They're not. Cast a provisional ballot, but so what?
Right. And so when you hear on the news when they're saying things like there's not enough to turn over the election, right, that have come forward for this fraud, right? Like that's just those 1 out of 4s or 1 out of 5s that you're talking about who have happened to notice that they voted when they didn't vote, or that someone voted for them before they got there. That kind of, wow. Okay. All right. I see. And so like, you don't know how many have been harvested, right? Like each one has been done, and it could have been 100,000, right? I mean, who knows?
Never, yeah. But here's the other key to this. You really need to do it by district. So, for example, I'm not going to do it across an entire county. Okay. What I would do is I would find the specific districts where I needed the most ballots from, and then I pick and choose, which ones are going to have the most impact on the race.
Okay. Wow. Yes. That would get you a few. That might swing, especially in a tight race, could totally swing it your way.
Well, when you want to swing it your way, you want to swing it tight, and the reason being is because it keeps you under the radar.
Well, and I remember Kennedy once joked. He told his father that he didn't want to buy too many. His father said he didn't want to buy more votes than what he needed because he didn't want to waste any money. So
Right? Yeah. So, but I mean, even so,
Got any other ways that we? That's a good one.
No,
Tough on that one.
But again, you could get a programmer, somebody. But here's the thing: is you always need somebody on the inside,
Okay.
and that becomes critical as well. Having somebody on the inside.
Sure.
And if you can get somebody to program, one of the voting systems for you, and to be honest with you, they're not that difficult. There was, I want to say it was a Harvard professor. It might have been a Princeton professor. Right after the 2016 race, that whole thing came out. Well, it was Russia, colluding for Trump or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
He got in and he got himself a voting machine and showed how he could completely change the programming in 7 minutes.
Wow, that's quick.
It is. And so from that standpoint, if you got somebody on the inside who has that knowledge, change a chip out, do whatever. And, I thought that was kind of telling. They could do it and show you how it's done. Trump probably had this done. Now the shoe's on the other foot.
I have seen that. There were lots, there's actually articles on NPR and Huffington Post about these Dominion voting machines from years before, right? And they were a concern that when they were worried that Trump might do this to steal the election. And now all of a sudden we have nothing to worry about, right? Our guy won, so y'all could just go back to sleep. It's okay. We got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2006, there was a company called Sequoia Voting Systems that was based in California, and they found that on their voting machines there was a little yellow button on the back, and if you press the little yellow button, it was a reset button, and it would not only tabulate your vote, but then you could vote again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
I wonder how many times you could vote.
That's a good button, right?
Exactly. Man. Wow. So, our whole system is built on trust, right? What do you think this does to the trust that we have? Can it be repaired back? Is it easily repaired back? What do you think?
I don't know. I think we're almost in a constitutional crisis at this point. What it comes down to is no matter who wins this election, the other side's going to claim fraud.
Of course. Yeah.
And so, obviously the Trump team feels like they have a really firm pathway to the presidency now. They feel like they've got enough evidence that they can get the court system to accept the case, and that they can drive it all the way.
It definitely appears that they're very confident, right? That they're very confident in what they have.
Right. Absolutely. And so, if they win, the left is going to go nuts.
Yeah.
If Biden wins, the right's going to go nuts. And yeah. I'm afraid of what a Biden presidency is. And I mean, I'm never afraid of that stuff. I know the limits of the presidency. I know the limits of people's ability to control inside of government. So I don't worry about it.
I agree. I believe that our founders planned ahead for moments like these where, it's very difficult to just run away with the government, right? That's very, very difficult. Even FDR couldn't do it, right? And he was fighting a war at the time. They get extra powers then. So,
well, the other thing is here too is most people don't think of it this way, but culture is superior to and drives politics. Politics is superior to and drives law. Law merely reinforces culture. And so pretty much. And if you think about it, when the government does something, completely pushes against the culture, it doesn't last long.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, it's the government can't change our culture. The government can't, we as a society have to accept things. One of my favorite examples of this was, because I hear people all the time say, well, it's law now. You're never going to change that, right?
Yeah.
But prohibition, that's the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So prohibition, it wasn't good enough to make it a law. They changed the entire Constitution to bring in prohibition, right?
Yeah.
And they a constitutional amendment, and they were pushing back against the culture of our society. And so our society went ahead and did what they were going to do anyway. And eventually it pushed the government so hard that they ended up having to rechange the Constitution again to get rid of it.
It is amazing that they went through the trouble of changing the Constitution over liquor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's a lot of heavy lifting to do that.
It is. But I mean, but then it's a lot of heavy lifting to turn it back as
To
well.
undo it, sure. Once you get it done, right? Exactly. And you're right. The culture did it, right? Like the pressure of the culture did the heavy lifting once again to change it. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that's the positive news out of this that you have for everybody, Kurt, is that we can handle this.
Oh yeah, we got this all day long, and that's the thing that I love about this too is the whole premise of KP Politics and CivicAuthority.com is that we as individuals have a certain power. We are the power generators in our society. Because most people never understood or learned how to use their power to influence, how to wield their authority. And so once people start to understand that politics by definition is social relations involving strategy to gain authority, that's what it is. And so what we want to do is we want to teach people how to build those relationships with their elected officials, with their neighbors, and be able to, using strategy, those relationships to put people in the place where you need them to be. One of my favorite quotes is Grandma once said that sometimes you got to hug people just so you know how big to dig the hole.
Nice.
And so, it's about building those relationships and putting people where you need them to be in order to have some semblance of control in our governance.
Okay. So if people, because I'm like, wow, that what you just said, I just want to get my notebook out and start writing down. Like, so can we go and learn more about this idea of our culture and how you think that we can fix the government from the people up? Where do we go to find out more info?
No, go to CivicAuthority.com. It's still being built. It's still in process. But I'm really kind of building this piecemeal. You and I had talked about before the Zoom meeting. You were like, if I just had $1 million, I could get somebody to do all this for me, right?
Right. That's right.
Exactly. And so I'm in the process of building, and so right posts on there. There's a way to get me to come out and teach classes. I'm in the process of writing the book. The book is going to be called Civic Authority.
All right.
And Civic Authority, a republic if you can keep it.
Okay.
And then I'm also getting ready to start doing a vlog.
Well, I look forward to reading it, the book and the blog. Kurt, I want to have you back on. As soon as you get either one ready to go, we'll talk about it some more. Thank you for making time for me today. Thank you for sharing with my listeners. That was CivicAuthority.com, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll be sure to put it in the show notes. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
You can find KP Politics. You can find KP Politics online on Facebook and Twitter and all that too.
Okay, KP Politics. Sounds good. Thanks, Kurt.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Hey, that's how it's supposed to work right there. I saw Jason who can eat a good lunch. Look at me. I'll be honest. I can eat a lot. The recording. And so I couldn't bring you on, but I would love to bring you on and let you talk to him sometime. Maybe we could, I can put 3 channels up here once I figure it out. And I've had you on the show before, Jason. Would love to have you again for sure. I think that what I have found is that there are lots of things that you and I agree on, and then sometimes we disagree. But the great thing is that even though we disagree, we can still be friends, and that's a strength of both of ours. I think is that we can be friends with people that may not see things the way we do. So anyway, thank you very much, Kurt Potter, for coming on the show and sharing. Again, his website is CivicAuthority.com. He's on Twitter and Parler and all those other things under KP. And Kurt is a great dude. If you're thinking about running for office, he's a good guy to hire to run it. And so anyway, that was a lot of information there for us to parse apart and think about. I wanted to talk, so locally this week, some of the news that came out is that we're out of school on Monday and Tuesday, right? And so, there's because COVID numbers have kept rising, and they keep rising. and it looks like there's no end in sight, so to speak, as far as the spike in numbers. I'll be sharing those. You can always go to the Tennessee government website. I think it's tn.gov/health, and you can look up by county how the COVID numbers are in your county. And our numbers here in Rutherford County they are on the rise. They are as high as they have been since, I believe, June, and so maybe a month before that. So, and that's when we started locking down last time, like really locking down businesses and things of that nature. I don't think that there's an appetite to lock down businesses here in a lot of states, especially in Tennessee. In Kentucky, the governor there has decided to lock the state down. I think he's limiting on how many people you can have over for Thanksgiving. My brother posted a really great picture. It's the "Come and Take It" flag that I believe it's similar to what they used at the Alamo about the cannons, but instead of a cannon, there's a turkey on it. And so anyway, it's this is making for some interesting politics. COVID has definitely shown our divisions and how wide they are. So that brings me to, let's talk about some libertarian stuff. So I think off by saying, explaining to you guys what a libertarian is. Libertarians, there are a lot of things that libertarians don't agree with. It's kind of like herding cats. And so we don't make a very good political party because none of us like to be told what to do. So that's a problem. But here's what unites us. This is that we have one principle that unites all libertarians, and that's the NAP, the non-aggression policy. And so I want to talk about what the NAP is today. Non-aggression policy means that we don't believe in using force. So we don't believe that I should or you should or the government should be using force in a first strike quality. So it's kind of like, I think it's the easiest way to explain the NAP is kind of how my mom and dad raised me. You are not allowed to lie, cheat, or steal. You're just not allowed to do that. Allowed to hit someone, to use physical force on someone unless they use physical force on you first. Do you remember that when you were growing up? Is that how it was in your playground where you were like I can remember kids would be like, no, you got to hit me first. No, you got to hit me first. And so, sometimes fights wouldn't occur because no one was willing to break that playground rule, that NAP, the non-aggression policy. And so I am a firm believer in it. And that is the first step in becoming a libertarian, is understanding the NAP. And I just think it is a good neighbor policy. It's the policy that I think makes for good neighbors. And if you can have good neighbors, then you can have good government. I just believe that the government should play by the same rules as you or I have to play by. And so that's what I want to talk about for libertarians. And every week I'm going to bring up something else for the liberty-minded. Like if you'd like to know how a libertarian would solve a problem, then please contact the show. You can contact me at Answer Fancher. It's on all the platforms, or you can always email me. I don't know what email I should use. Let's go with g@mt615.com. It's mt615.com. So G as in Gabriel at mt615.com. Feel free to send me an email, ask me any question, and I'm going to answer it as best I can on here as far as how a libertarian would, and do my best to represent the libertarians that are out there. We are a growing party because a lot of people are not happy with the Republican Party, and a lot of people are not happy with the Democrat Party. And there are a lot of independents out there. And I dare say that a lot of those independents probably think a lot like a libertarian does, and that's why they're independent. So the tough part for the Libertarian Party is trying to get all these people to realize that they are libertarians, to realize that there isn't available on the ballot for them at sometimes to vote for. And so again, it all starts with the NAP, non-aggression policy. We just believe that government should act just like you or I, a good neighbor, does. We don't believe that you should lie, cheat, steal, act in fraud, and you should not have a first strike policy. And so there you go, libertarians. That brings me to another bit of news. There was some unfortunate news up in Laverne. that's the north part of Rutherford County. There was, I guess, an altercation between the police and a alleged crime break. I don't know what the proper term is, but anyway, from what I could tell, it looks like some weapons were used and a police dog died, and which is unfortunate and very sad, very, very sad that anyone had to die. But it does bring up an interesting point that I think I'll drop on here and give you guys about, and you can talk about in the chat wherever you're watching. But the issue is, so when a police dog dies in the line of duty, like in this case where a perpetrator allegedly shot the dog, they are charged with murder, just as if they'd shot a police officer. And so, which I have no problem with if that's what society wants to do. But here's the problem I have, is that if the police shoot your dog, do you think that they are treated as if they shot a person? No, they're not. Dogs are treated as property when you own them and the police shoot them. Whereas if the dog attacks a perpetrator and you shoot the dog, then and it's a police dog on duty, then you get the penalty is not the same. And so I just think that penalties should be equal for the government and for the people. So that's why I have a problem with it. But of course, taking on this type of issue when something like this, when it's been brought to attention, it's tough right now because a lot of emotions get into it and they don't think as clearly when they're emotional. And so a dog dying is never a good thing, never, ever. I got to share with my class this week about the time that I lost my dog when he ran away and I found him because my parents came and helped me out. We're doing personal narratives in my class. And so I shared that story with them. And then, of course, went on to tell them that I had Merlin for 13 years and he passed away and how sad I was when he passed away. So I understand that dogs become parts of families. And a lot of people feel that way. So this is not a trivial thing by any means. But what it means to me is that there's a discrepancy in how the government is treated and how the people are treated. And so I have a problem with it. And I want you guys to talk about it. So please, in the comments below, please make sure you like and share the show. Go online, find me at where you download podcast and add the Middle Ground podcast to your downloads and listen to the whole show. You'll get to hear the new jingles that I have that I'm bringing in. And if you get a chance, do me a favor, rate the show and, give me a few bonus points because I wear a bow tie. I don't know. But anyway, I hope you guys had a great show. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, Kurt Potter, for coming on. Jason and all the others who have offered chatting up, then thank you for doing that. I really appreciate you guys watching the show and interacting with the show. Wouldn't be possible without you guys. Thank you. Have a great week. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you again Saturday, next Saturday. I think it's December by then. No, actually, still November. Talk to you then. Bye.